can see that. I think though after the things that took place today with Mark Richt in Georgia, with Mark Richt in Miami, Kirby Smart, they're not going to look at South Carolina. The fact that Mark Richt got right back involved in coaching and winning an average of 9 games, winning 78% of your games, everything he did, Kirby Smart's going to have to live up to Mark Richt, who's not going to the television studio. If Mark Richt goes down and starts winning at Miami, and Kirby Smart comes out of the box, and let's be honest, the bar is so high for Kirby Smart in year one. If you don't win the SEC East, you failed. If Mark Richt goes down and wins instantly at Miami, that's who he's compared to. South Carolina's a rebuilding job right now. If they can get to 7 wins next year, regardless of the head coach, it'll be a success. If they can get to 8, there are some deficiencies. So while I understand what you're saying, and yes, it is, there will be some comparisons, obviously. For Kirby Smart, he's in a much bigger situation there because they're going to look down there to Miami now. And the first time Kirby Smart loses a game that he shouldn't and Mark Richt pulls off an upset, and I think we both know Mark Richt's one of the best coaches in the country, and that's going to happen. They're going to go, I can't believe we fired that guy to bring in an unproven head coach. I'll be honest, I was stunned with the decision to let Mark Richt go, given his resume, given his things. Certainly could have changes been made to that staff. Yes, it's not a good staff, and offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer was probably a poor hire there. But Kirby Smart enters that thing not competing against whoever South Carolina hires in the Gamecocks. He's going to be competing against the entire East, but also against whatever it is Mark Richt's doing in Miami, which puts him in an awful position.
So you've been pretty clear here. You are in the Mark Richt camp that Georgia is out of its mind in letting him go.
I don't understand how you do anything like that. I mean, the ladder only goes so high, and to get into that rarefied air, I get it. And I'm one of the people who says that Georgia conceivably is one of the, if not the most underachieving program in the last 30 years because no national championships, not even playing for a national championship. You look around the SEC and what Auburn's done, playing in 2 championship games and winning 1, LSU, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee's even won 1 back in the 90s. I mean, look, I get it, Georgia, but you only can go so high. I mean, the bar is set now. Kirby Smart, you inherit a great recruiting class. You inherit a great team. Next year, you don't win double-digit games. You don't win the East. You failed. You failed right off the bat. And how long is your tenure if you go 3 years and Jim McElwain looks like he's starting to get things going at Florida? Butch Jones is recruiting out of his mind at Tennessee. These programs are getting better. And if you're Georgia and you don't win an SEC East in the next 3 years, you fire him, right? Because that's the precedent you just set last Saturday. It's win the SEC championship or fired.
In addition to his wins and losses track record, I'm going to make 1 point for Richt and 1 against him. The 1 point I'll make in addition to what he accomplished on the field is that the guy is a solid guy. You don't need to worry about bringing him into your football program and guys running amok. You're always going to have some issues. You got 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds running around, 105 of them. You're always going to have some minor issues, but he has always run a clean program. He's a man of integrity, man of character. He's a family guy. He's a solid guy. He's a great guy. Nothing but great things to say about Mark Richt. On the other hand, the recruiting base is there. It's surrounding Atlanta. I saw a study a couple months ago that Atlanta and the metro area produces more high-caliber FBS players and NFL players than any metro area in the country. So it's loaded with talent. So we're going to see if these top 5 and top 10 classes are the doing of Mark Richt more or the University of Georgia. We'll see with the new coach coming in there. So my one knock against Mark Richt is he won the 8 or 9 games he was supposed to win, and then every year there were 2 or 3 games where the other team lined up and they were just as talented, and he usually lost those games. And I really can't think of one game that a Mark Richt team jumped up and pulled off a major upset where he did an outstanding coaching job in any particular game to pull off a major upset. I
agree with you on the recruit. I think you and I could lead the Georgia program and pull in a top 5 class because of, like you said, the talent is in the state of Georgia. Now, the last 2 years ago, Todd Gurley goes down, and Nick Chubb obviously stepped up and was a very good player. And this year, Nick Chubb goes down, and so forth and so on. He's had some injuries there. There have been, I will say this for Georgia and agree completely. There's been mind-boggling losses for the Bulldogs. I saw one last year at Williams-Brice Stadium when an undermanned South Carolina team somehow beat them 38-35. I also witnessed that Florida game last year where Florida threw 6 passes and ran for 418 yards, and somehow, some way, Georgia fell on their face in that game. So I understand that it'll be interesting to see Mark Richt. And again, that goes back as you watch everything transpire here in the Southeastern Conference. I mean, especially in the Eastern Division where you lost Steve Spurrier, you lose Mark Richt, and you lose Gary Pinkel. And that's 3 really good coaches. That's 3 really high-quality individuals. The SEC East is going to be different, and it sets up perfectly as Jim McElwain transitions in, as Butch Jones appears to be getting that program up and running. The SEC East is wide open all of a sudden, and that's why I say, to go back to your initial point, the Kirby Smart comparisons to South Carolina, he doesn't have to worry about that. I think he's competing against a lot of other factors, and man, the bar is set so high for him instantaneously out of the gate, having to win, and that makes it so tough.
And the coach can only control so much. So unfortunately, as we've seen in the SEC this season, if Hunter Henry doesn't throw the ball back over his head on a 4th and 25, Alabama's not in the SEC championship game. And for Mark Richt 3 years ago, if the clock doesn't tick off or the pass receiver doesn't down the football at the 4-yard line, he's got another couple plays to get a shot at the national championship game, a game that they would have been a decided favorite in against Notre Dame. And maybe the entire track record from a perception standpoint of the typical fan is completely reversed on Mark Richt.